At the end of this video, we'll take a look at Mad Ramp's innovative pivoting ramp system, the safer, easier way to transport your ATVs and snowmobiles. Stick around. Before we get started, I'd like to give a quick shout out to some of our friends. The Eastern Snowmobile Racing Hall of Fame. Search for them on Facebook. Central Minnesota Pond Racing. Search for them on Facebook. The historic Lancaster Motel for the ultimate Eastern trail riding adventure. Crane's Snowmobile Museum at 172 Main Street in Lancaster, New Hampshire. The Vintage Snowmobile Club of America Quarterly Magazine. The Bridge Street Garage Racing Team, the house racing team of the Vintage Snowmobile Podcast. The New Hampshire Snowmobile Museum at Bear Brook State Park in Allenstown, New Hampshire. And lastly, if you decide to advertise with the Vintage Snowmobile Podcast, this could be your advertising message. Good evening and welcome to the podcast. I'm really glad you're here tonight. We have a robust lineup. Let me say it again, robust. I've got to practice that word. It didn't come out right the first time. Robust lineup of vintage snowmobile entertainment on tap for you tonight. Here's the menu. I was going to have a live guest, but it's not going to happen tonight. But the good news is the next 3 weeks we have live guests lined up each and every podcast. And that is my goal, is to have someone on here live every week. But we just started the podcast live again this month of October, and it's taken a little while to get the ball rolling as far as getting the Rolodex primed the way it was last season. So before we get started, let's make sure everything is working properly. If you can see my face and hear my voice, I'm going to ask you to make a comment. Let me know where you're viewing this from and whether or not you're a first-time viewer or a regular viewer. Now, if you're a first-time viewer, thank you so much for stopping by to check us out. I hope you enjoy this and decide to join us here each and every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And to our regular viewers, thank you so much for coming here every week and spending time with us. We really appreciate it, and we could not do it without you. So let's get right into some comments, see what people are saying, see what the word is on the street here. Perry Kebnitz, regular viewer from Pembina, North Dakota. Thank you for coming on, Perry. We appreciate it. Deborah Kais says hello to Diane Baker. Thanks for coming on, Deborah. Christopher Cox saying hello to Michael Geisler. I'm not sure how that's pronounced. But thank you, Chris, for coming on. We really appreciate it. Diane Baker saying hello to Deb Kais. Good deal. People are saying hello back and forth. This is wonderful. Jim Layton, our good friend Jim Layton, is here again. He's going to be on here live on November 4th, and we can't wait to see what he's got to show us. He was on live twice last season. He had some really interesting things to show us each time, and he said he's got some new and improved things he wants to show us. Cannot wait to make that happen. So be sure to tune in here November 4th, as well as the next couple of weeks as well. We've got other things coming, other live guests coming on next week, as well as on November 11th. Gary J. Lipka says hello to Chad Warren. Our good friend John Spranger Jr., regular viewer from Eland, Wisconsin. We've got Les Beck, Let It Snow. We've got Tony Alfrenes saying hello from Minnesota. Dennis Chemnitz from Warren, Minnesota. We've got Doug Stewart. Used to have a Yamaha GPX 338cc free air. That thing would hit 80 in a heartbeat, and that was in 1972. That would have been a great time, especially out on a lake. Glenn Ford from Vernon Center, New York. Thanks for coming on. Sam Farringer, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, regular viewer. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll just do a couple more here and we'll get right into the programming. Our good friend Brian Robillard from Putnam, Connecticut. Brian was the first person to come on this podcast live. He will always have the distinction, and I will always give him a shout out to that effect every time we see his name pop up here. So thank you for coming on, Brian. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to having you on later in the season as well. This is the last comment before we get into the programming. Brian Van Haverbeek says good evening, and thank you, Brian. We truly appreciate it. Let's get back into the menu here. What's on tonight? We've got my good friend Bud Gordon, and he has a 1974 Sno Jet Thunderjet, and this was at a vintage snowmobile show that I put on back in 2018 here in the thriving metropolis of Derby Line, Vermont, and he is one of the exhibitors that came. When we get this queued up, we'll take a look at his Thunderjet.
Okay, this is a 1974 Sno Jet Thunderjet. It's a 340 model, but it's got a 440 modified engine in it. This sled I bought back in 1985, and I used to drag race it in Northwood, New Hampshire for years, up through the early 90s. Like I said, I've owned it for quite a few years. I've had a lot of fun with it drag racing. It's been a very competitive sled. I'm going to hold on to this one probably forever. You just don't find a lot of these around. And in 1989, I won a Mod Stock 3 championship with this sled. It's had about 3 different engines in it over the years. Basically, I just show it and take it out to have fun with on the ice now and then. And, good running sled.
Yeah, so that's my good friend Bud Gordon. And by the way, he put on an excellent Vintage Snowmobile show last weekend down in Goffstown, New Hampshire. I normally go to that every year, but this year I had a conflict, so unfortunately I was not able to make it, but I was in touch with him earlier today. He said the show went really well, and I encourage you to put that on your calendar. He has a really nice show down there in Goffstown, New Hampshire, every mid-October. Very much a show worth checking out if you're in the area. It's just outside of Manchester, New Hampshire. So let's see what else we've got lined up here. We've got some footage from Jerrald Stewart, and this is from the Cohocton, New York Vintage Snowmobile show a few years ago. And this is footage that he sent me a few years ago for another project that I was working on. And I've got a bit of a dilemma here with the podcast, with this interface that I'm using. Right now, I have to limit each video to 5 minutes. I can play a longer video, but it chokes. So you probably saw a couple of weeks ago where I tried to play a couple of videos, and the videos were locking up and choking. So longer than 5 minutes, I break it up with video editing, and we watch it in parts, which leads me to the setup here for this footage at the Cohocton Vintage Snowmobile show. This is part 1 of 2. Part 2 will be a little later in the evening. We'll take a look at part 2 a little later. But here's part 2, looking at Jerrald Stewart's footage from the Cohocton, New York Vintage Snowmobile show a few years ago.
Hello and welcome to the Fall Classic Antique and Vintage Snowmobile Show at the Cohocton Fall Foliage Festival in Cohocton, New York. Here's just a sample of what they have here in store for the people to see, and people have brought out. This is an original snowmobile. As you can see, it's built in 1974, owned by Tim Rosenberg. Next we have 1971 and 72, an Artie Cat Cheetah, owned by Gary Clark. And right behind it we have a original Artie Cat Cutter, as you can see, also owned by Gary Clark. As we work our way down through, you see another old relic, 1974 Gorski Sport, owned by David Newton of Fenway Lake. Also by David Newton, an Artie Cat 1966 snowmobile, very nice shape. Next we have a 1985 Yamaha SRV Tyler Brody. We have a John Deere 1978, owned by Dalton Hunt. Liquid Fire. Also a 340 1976 John Deere. Very interesting machine here. The wheels.
There you go, Tristan. You want
This is a 1971 Rupp 440 owned by Tim Walsh. This is a custom job. And we have a 1971 Ski-Doo TNT, Tim Walsh. Also 1971 restored Ski-Doo TNT 640, also owned by Tim Walsh. We got a 1971, another 1971 Ski-Doo TNT 440, owned by Tim Walsh. And we got a little miniature version for the kitties down here as well. And some older models here. Another 1971 TNT. Moving on, we see a real nice 1972 Polaris Starfire racer, Jeff Barnett. We have a 1977 Yamaha Exciter. Really good shape. Run by Jan Westeros. We've got another one, 1974 Yamaha. Another Yamaha here, 1973. We have a 1971 Yamaha 554037 by Mark Zula.
So there you go. That was some nice footage sent to us by Jerrald Stewart, and I thank him so much for doing that. And that was at a vintage snowmobile show in Cohocton, New York, a few years ago. Now, I would like to encourage you, if you're going to vintage snowmobile shows, races, any kind of vintage snowmobile event, to please take out your cell phone and take some footage. We'll put it here on the podcast for all of us to enjoy. All you have to do is take your cell phone and hold it horizontally like this for a wide shot. It's very difficult for me to work with vertical footage like this. It's very difficult to edit that, so please hold it like this. And there's a few ways you can do it. As you saw what Jerrald was doing, he was walking around with the camera and talking up the sleds that he was looking at. Another option is to approach some of the exhibitors, ask them if they feel like talking up their sleds. You've seen a lot of the footage that I do where I go to shows and do that. And of course, not everyone's comfortable doing that. I totally get that. And I'm certainly not going to press anyone to do that if they're not comfortable with it. And let's say, for instance, you are not comfortable with doing that. Another thing is just to walk around and get some footage of the sleds. Walk around and just with the camera horizontally like this, get some footage of the sleds. Send it to me. I'll put some music under it. And if it's in sections or if there's parts that where you have to set the camera down for a second, I can edit all that stuff out. I can put music under it, put graphics with your name, as you saw there, with Jerrald Stewart's name on there and the name of the show. I'll put that up. Make sure you get full credit for it, and please send it to me for all of us to enjoy. I don't know about you, but I love going to shows, taking that footage, and I also love looking at footage other people have done, especially shows that are not in this area that I can't really travel to realistically. It's really neat to see what people are doing in this vintage hobby and all of the different shows that are everywhere. And one of the things I really like to see is there are more and more shows popping up, more new shows popping up every year, and they're incredibly well attended. I'm really encouraged to see that. That tells me that this vintage snowmobile hobby is in very good health and makes me very happy. What I wanted to also, let me change screens here on my interface. If you have footage or taking footage, this is how you send it to me. And if you're having trouble sending it to that email address, just send me a message, and there's a number of different ways you can send the files to me. In the description of this podcast is a link to a video that shows how to share video files with me using either Google Drive or Dropbox. And I would love to see that footage so we can all enjoy it. And one last thing before we get into the next video is we've got some more comments coming in. We've got Kevin Struck from Michigan, Starcraft Snowmobiles. Those were great snowmobiles. I remember those. Jack Ulch saying hello. Thanks for checking in. Appreciate it. And Jack is a regular viewer, by the way. He sent us some excellent footage last winter, and I hope that you're planning to attend some vintage snowmobile events again, Jack, and sharing some footage with us. We would love to see that. Thank you again so much for the footage you sent last year. We were able to spread that out over a few different episodes. That was really nice. Gary Osuntowski is watching. Thank you so much, Gary, for coming on. We appreciate it. Jeff Korn from Indiana. He likes Starcraft and Johnson snowmobiles. Outstanding. Brent Corbin likes Ski-Doo Alpines from mid-Michigan. Twin tracks, single ski. Those were truly cool. And then we've got Jerry Jackson. I was talking to him, chatting with him earlier in the day. Now, Jerry is the organizer of that Cohocton show, and he's telling me that footage was from the 2018 show, and Jeff, the gentleman who filmed it, unfortunately, he passed away last year. That is really sad news. But hopefully, as Jerry is organizing future events with the Cohocton show, he maybe can talk with some of the people that he's involved with and see if maybe they can take some footage, either talking up sleds or just raw footage that I can put music under. We would love to see some more of that Cohocton show on future events that you're holding. We've also got Bruce Halls from Humboldt, Saskatchewan. Thanks for coming on, Bruce. Great to see you. Steve Woodward from Rochester, New York. And before we get back into things, Chuck Luand questioning about Starcraft snowmobiles. I don't know if he's not familiar with them or if he has questions about them. If you can expand on that, Chuck, with another comment, I'd love to hear exactly what's on your mind with that. And Tom Svobodny, I hope I haven't butchered that, from Wilmar, Minnesota. Jim Gaucione, great job. He's a regular viewer, and he thanks us for keeping this hobby going. Thank you as well for keeping this hobby going by coming on here. That's what keeps me going. If people don't show up for this, I would lose interest and not do it. So I appreciate all of you guys who come on here to watch this for doing that. And please share this with friends, anyone who you think might enjoy this. Please share this for all to enjoy and help spread the word about this podcast. And, oh, wait, Jerry has an update. Oh, I see. So yes, thank you for correcting me on that, Jerry. It wasn't the video guy who passed away. It was the Starfire owner who passed away. Thank you for correcting us on that, Jerry. I don't want to report that someone has passed away that hasn't. But yes, thank you for correcting us on that. And one last comment before we get back into the programming. Jared Saylor is watching us tonight from Oregon. And thank you so much, Jared, for coming on. We really appreciate it. Get back into the program here. The menu says that the next video we're going to watch is my friend Ray Parenteau showing me his custom 1977 Rupp Magnum 440. I was up at his place just last month, and we filmed a number of his sleds. This is one of the sleds we filmed, and this is an example. I said that my minimum length that I can go with a video is 5 minutes, so I've had to break this footage down into two sections. It's going to be part 1 and part 2. There'll be a slight break in the middle of this video, but let's take a look at Ray Parenteau's incredible Rupp. You're really going to like this.
So what we have here is a very custom sled. I had probably got the accumulation of about 5 different sleds here. What it's supposed to be, okay, let me see, where do we start? The biggest hunk that came from, it's a 77 Rupp Nitro tunnel. And on this tunnel, this was sent to me from one of my buddies out west. The gentleman's name is Gary Weiss. He lives in Deer River, Minnesota. He said he had a decent tunnel because I had an accumulation of parts, and I said, well, I need a decent tunnel to build this next project. So he wrapped it up with cardboard, and he sent me the bare tunnel. And so we started with that. Then I had the skid underneath, came from another sled. Armin Buto had that up in Pittsburgh.
Sure.
So Armin had that. And I said, I'm looking for a skid. And Armin handed me this grizzly old looking skid. And he said, well, that was in pretty good shape. So I purchased that. Now, I had a motor from previous projects sitting around. So I had that. And I had a decent seat foam. And I just had a pretty good collection of stuff. And I had a pretty decent bulkhead. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to build a nitro, which would be a rubber track, long, versus the Magnum that I had, decent trail rider. So what I got in the end was this. So let me, now this doesn't have hinges and it doesn't have a bumper because I wanted the Magnum look. As you can see, the decals, the paint, nothing really matches here. I mean, it's painted like a 76, but I added the striping here and I kind of manipulated the Magnum decals to make it look the way I wanted it to look. So let me go ahead and pop the hood off.
Yeah.
Now I got the idea for the rubber hold downs because this is what Bill Stull puts on all his race sleds.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm like, well, hell, that's a good idea. So I got them from Bill.
Nice.
So we take the hood off.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
So I had this engine off from 2 other sleds that I had bought piece parted out and so on. So where this motor came from, the odometer said that it had 5,700 miles on it. So in my opinion, I said, wow, it's got 5,700 miles on it. You got to know it's got some time on it. I said, I think I'm just going to go ahead and have crank bearings put in it. So,
yeah, I'll give them a minute. And I can edit that out. It's okay to pause for a second.
So I called Kevin Hayes from Pipestone, and Kevin said to me, well, hell, why don't you just send the case right to me and we'll do the bearings for you. So I said, okay, that's fine. And I sent that out to him, and he is your Ziona engine guy, if you will. He knows his stuff with that. So I sent that short block out to him, and he sent it back. And this is the result here. So,
all right. So that was part one. Let's continue with this conversation with part two.
If you look closely, what I did here to make this a Magnum front end, the bulkhead, I thought when I purchased it was supposed to be a Magnum bulkhead. I don't know if you can see it, but I had to extend it 3.5 inches right here to give it the width, to make it wide, just like a Magnum would be. And these panels came from Bill, and so I made a Magnum front end. I like the looks of it. I like the width. I think it'll make a kind of a cool trail sled. Being wider, it might handle a little better.
Yeah, it's got a great stance.
And I had several pieces powder coated. My buddies down, Martin Bristol down there, the performance powder coating. They did the exhaust. They did the shield. What else did they do? I guess that's all they did on this one. And yeah, they're good guys for that.
Yeah.
So on this sled, I asked Kevin when I was building the motor, I said, okay, if I'm going to have a trail sled on a nitro, it's supposed to have that liquid cooled bumper like those sleds do. If you notice, those sleds have got that. That helps for cooling for trail riding. And he said to me, I've got a cure for that. And I said, well, I'm on the phone with him. I'm chatting. I said, so what are we talking about? He said, I've got a better radiator. So on a Rupp, this is your radiator in here. You can see inside there. So what I put it's an aluminum radiator. It's got an extra core in it. So that'll help with the cooling. And he said, it was my understanding that obviously we don't have any snow yet, but that's what I put in it. I've had this thing running, idling, carrying on, and I can't get it to just sitting in my garage. It keeps cool perfectly right there. And he said that is the same radiator they use when they do their dyno testing.
Nice.
So I'm pretty confident that won't be a problem.
Yeah.
So, but I'm fairly proud about this sled because every nut and bolt on it just about I touched.
Yeah.
It was literally a bare tunnel when we started, and it was just all accumulation of all the parts and pieces, and it came out pretty good.
Yeah, it's sharp. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Let me get this angle here. Yeah, that's really nice. Yeah, so how do you like that for a custom sled? It's amazing what Ray Parenteau has done with that. And like I said, I was up there last month visiting him up at his place, filming these sleds. As you saw, he's got a nice collection there. And we were filming for a few hours, and we ran out of time before we could film on each and every one of those sleds. So at some point, I want to go up there again and and finish what we started. And I've still got a couple of more sleds that he talked up, that we'll have on future episodes of the podcast. But yeah, I do plan on going up there again and doing some filming with him. As you can see, he does excellent work, and he's really good about talking them up and giving us all the details on it, all the lowdown, so to speak. If you're viewing this, I know Ray is viewing this. Please leave him some love in the comments. Let him know what you thought about that custom sled and the amazing work he did with that. And let's take a quick look at the comments before we continue. There's a few more that have come in. We have Chuck Lewand. Okay, he's saying he's never heard of the Starcraft snowmobiles coming in, and he's watching from mid-Michigan. Yeah, I think back in the 70s, a lot of boat makers, people were making outboard motors and stuff, were making the snowmobiles. Anybody who made lawnmowers or chainsaws or motorcycles, everyone was getting in on the snowmobile scene, and Starcraft was part of that. But yeah, thank you so much for checking in, Chuck. We really appreciate your checking in and watching this and asking questions. Also, my good friend Patrick Goodrow, who I was chatting with earlier today, he's trying to fix me up with a buddy of his who has a shed full of sleds. And we're going to work out the details on that and hopefully have his friend Dave on here in the near future to look at his sleds as well. Likewise, if you've got a shed full of sleds, or a man cave or a barn or whatever it is you've got, and you've got sleds out there, please go out there with your cell phone like this, walk around, take some footage, talk up your sleds, let us know what you've got there, and we'll put it here on the podcast. I'm going to pop the email address of where to send that right here. That's where you're going to send that, and you also look in the description for details. There's a link for a video that shows how to send your footage to me. And let's go back in the comments because there are a couple of more before we continue with the program. Hello to Pat Lima from Southeast Missouri. Thank you so much, Pat, for checking in. We appreciate your viewing. Dominic Anthony Kane from the Thumb area of Michigan. As Michigan looks like a hand, he's out on the thumb. I don't know. I have to look at a map, but yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Alden Banks, hello from New Brunswick, Canada. He's a regular viewer. We appreciate you being back this season and checking us out. Yeah, thank you so much. So let's get back into the program. I've got some more cool stuff to show you. Now, item number 5 is where we are right now, and Herb Yancy is one of the very top racers of the East. He also did well in other parts of the country as well. But in 2019, he was inducted into the Eastern Snowmobile Racing Hall of Fame, and I've got that induction. And just like I was doing earlier, I'm limited to 5 minutes on these videos, and it took longer than that, so we're going to do this induction in parts. So there'll be a quick break in the middle, but let's get right into it here. Let's watch Herb Yancy, one of the top riders of the East, being inducted into the Eastern Snowmobile Racing Hall of Fame back in 2019.
Mr. Herb Yancy. Every Hall of Fame has to have, the rest of them, they all deserve to be in the Hall of Fame big time. Everybody here deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, but, the Music Hall of Fame has Elvis Presley. The NASCAR Hall of Fame has Richard Petty. The Baseball Hall of Fame has Babe Ruth. Are you ready for this? Herb Yancy, inducted into the Eastern Snowmobile Racing Hall of Fame, 2019. Herb's racing career spans 30 years, from 1964 to 1994. He wore USSA Gold Bibs number 2, 3, 7, and 20. In 1970, Herb raced for Pennsylvania Arctic Cat distributor Penn Arctic. He then began racing for Team Abo, which soon became the most successful team in the history of Eastern Snowmobile racing in 1975. Became the only independent driver ever to win a snow pro race, beating the factory teams in the 650 class at the 1974 World Series in Eagle River, Wisconsin. He beat the snow pro guys. At Peterborough, Ontario in 1975, Herb won the 440 class in the professional driver's circuit both days. He also won a Kilkenny Cup in Mod 2 at the 1975 Lancaster Grand Prix. Counting the 74 win, Herb has won 6 World Series events. He won 3 firsts at the 1977 World Series in Weedsport, New York, and took 2 more at the 1978 World Series in West Yellowstone, Montana, winning in both the 440 Supermod and the 440X. For his effort, he was voted Star of the Series. Out of the 99 events Herb entered in 1977, He won 77 of them. Herb won the coveted Adirondack Cup in 1978 and became Driver of the Year for the 1978 season. In all, Herb Yancy garnered an amazing number of trophies, estimated to be between 1,200 and 1,500 during his racing career. His record as an independent, non-factory snowmobile racer is unmatched by anyone's standard and may never be surpassed. Ladies and gentlemen, please bow or curtsy.
Well, I want to start off with saying that it's snowmobile racing has always been a big part of my life. It was probably the number one thing that I ever wanted to do from the time I was about 14 years old and rode on my first snowmobile. And it had a long and diverse road that I followed. And I don't know quite what to say other than I just appreciate all the support that I had over the years. And I can't begin to thank everybody, but I'm going to try. I was just a farm kid that didn't have much, but I knew that I wanted to go fast. I just loved the speed that I could obtain on anything that I ever was aboard. And a local dealer, our cat dealer, Dick Rennie from Casterland, New York, knew that I liked snowmobiles and I was pretty good at it, so he offered me a ride the first year. And he didn't have anybody to ride the big sleds, and he knew I liked speed. So he put me on a 634 Puma right out of the gate, and I went to a race. I come over to Lee, Massachusetts, and we went to a race, and we did pretty good, but it wasn't on top of the field, because there was a lot of tough competition over here. And then I think the next weekend, we went to the New York State Fairgrounds, and all the factories were there. And I found out at that point that I had some talent and I had some ability to compete with the big boys. I remember Yvonne Duhamel, I raced it. He was in the class with me in the 650 class. And make a long story short, I wound up placing third against the factories way back then on my first early beginning. But there's a long road after that. Once I got done with the dealer racing for Rennie Sales and Service, I moved to New Jersey, and I didn't know what I was going to do in New Jersey as far as snow sled racing, because there was no races there. So I got hooked up with a Pennsylvania distributor and Penarden, and they didn't have any big sled drivers either, so they were glad to welcome me on board. So I raced all over Pennsylvania until 1974.
And the induction continues. Let me click the next part here.
And had quite a lot of good success and run into a lot of tough drivers down in that neighborhood. Then I, as one of the people were mentioning, the sponsorship or the dealers or distributors were getting acquired by Nero Equipment. They acquired Rodco in New England here, and then they acquired the following year, they acquired Penardi. So at the end of the 74 year, I was done with my sponsorship again. So I went to Eagle River for the snowmobile race World Series that year, and I was going to run against the Snow Pro because I always lagged a few points from being in the top 10, so I missed my invitation in 74. And when I got out there, I said, well, I can run against the factories. So I signed up, and in the afternoon, early afternoon, we had the Snow Pro, they were the elite show, so I was signed up in that class, so I went out and practiced on the racetrack. Well, my sled broke down because it wasn't up to par. So the night before at the restaurant, Team Bill Abel, offered me one of their sleds, and I said, no, I'll ride mine. So I rode mine and it broke down. So then, after it broke down, I said, well, there's one chance I can still get in. So I run over to Team Abel's bus, and I said, is that sled available? And they said, sure, but we're busy with Ron Hall's sled because he's our main concern. And I said, well, I understand, so I will work at it and see if I can get it put together. They had it all pieced out, routed parts for this and that, and they said, we brought it along. We weren't going to run it, but it's here. You can take it. So So I got it all put together, and by the way, it was Chip Elwood's sled. It was freshly put together because he didn't get it put together early in the season, so it was all fresh. And it was, I took it into the pit. In them days, they used to lock the pit gates. Once you went in, you couldn't go back out to get a part or spark plug or anything. So you had to take everything you needed into the locked pit. And by then, Ronnie was done with his class, so all of Team Abel's mechanics jumped right on the sled, and we put it together in the pits. And so the first time that I rode that sled was when I pulled on the line in the heat race with all the factory drivers. And never sat on it before, but it was such a prepared sled that I went out there and I placed third. It was enough to turn over into the semi. And I said, if we can get this sled tuned up just a little bit more, I said, I think I can really place in this race. And it was so much better than my sled that I just was just like I was tuned for it. I took it into the corners so hard that everyone thought I was going to crash every lap going in, and I would slide right up to the wall within a foot of the wall and then charge back down through. And I remember the race quite vividly. Charlie Lofton was ahead of me. I got out in the feature just about third, and then picked them off one by one. By about the sixth lap, I was ready to go into the lead. And I took the lead, and I said, well, Charlie Lofton was who I was dueling with. He pulled back by me. And then the next lap, I went by him again, and then I never seen him again. I said, I wonder what happened. Well, I don't know. I guess something gave out on the sled. But then I was out front all by myself and won the race. So that was one of the highlights of my career, is beating the factories with a big machine against those seasoned drivers and all the budget they had, and that was just, I can't say how much that was a highlight. And so then the rest, I got invited to join Team Abel for the coming seasons, and that's when my career really took off. And I had mechanics helping me. It wasn't a one-man show anymore, and we had good support. And so I owe so much to Team Abel and the whole crew, Ronnie and Chip and the mechanics. That just made everything possible. It left me more time to concentrate on driving, and as some of you probably know, I was a pretty intense driver. I was all business, and when I went to the races, there was no monkey business. Everything was serious. So I just, I could go on and on about a lot of stories. If you want to talk to me one-on-one or anytime, I'm available to correspond with any or everyone, because the sport will give me so much in my life that I can never repay what I owe.
They don't call him the giant killer for nothing.
Giant killer indeed. Yes, sir. Now, I messaged Herb earlier today to let him know that his induction was going to be on, so I hope that he's viewing this. So assuming that he is, please, in the comments, leave him some love. Please congratulate him and leave some compliments for him. And one last thing before we're finished with Herb Yancy. After the induction ceremony, I managed to catch him for a quick interview. Let's take a look at that interview with Herb Yancy.
I can't be thankful enough to this organization, Paul Crane and Midge and his other associates, which I don't personally know, but this is a great thing for snowmobiling and the vintage aspect of it. It's just phenomenal that I am a part of that. I feel honored to be inducted into this year's inductees. I have so many people to thank that it's hard to go through and mention them all.
Sure.
But snowmobile is so much of my part of my life.
Do you have any fond memories of if like racing memories that come to mind? Any like maybe like a racing story you would like to share? Or?
Well, all these stories, like I mentioned in the presentation,
Sure.
I always loved running against the factory because they're the best. They got the best budget. If you could even stay with them, that's such an honor.
Sure.
And I loved it when they would when we'd pull in, especially with Team Able. I've heard this quote many times, and I've read it in print in Warriors of Winter, that there comes that Team Able and that damn Yancy. So that kind of tickles my fancy.
Nice.
And I just loved racing against them because they're the best of the best. And so where does that put me? I'm right there in the same category.
Nice.
And it's nice to have that feeling.
Yeah, for sure.
To know that you're that caliber.
Yeah, and that people are still thinking about it these many years later.
Yes, and I didn't realize it until just recent years, digging up all this old stuff, that I was just one driver that was, they loved to watch race because I was so animated and all over that sled. I did whatever I needed to. I could jump on for any sled and bring it in, even if it didn't have a track record of being a winner. It was so great to get the most potential out of a unit when you're on it. And I've ran various sleds for various people over the years, and some of them I said, I don't know how the driver could drive that sled, but I would still get it around.
Nice.
It's just such a honor to be recognized for what's going on now, the resurgence in this vintage program. So I just talked to Mark Bellinger, and he did Midge's sled, restored it with two other guys, his son and another guy, and they're getting involved in the vintage racing. So I'm sure we're going to have a good association, because he does just a super job restoring them sleds and making them look great.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, Team Abold and that damn Yancy. That's the greatest line I think I've heard on this program. That is really cool. And I see some comments have come in. I'm going to check on those in a moment. I'm hoping that they're comments to compliment Herb, as well as on Ray Parenteau's Rupp we were looking at a few minutes ago. But before we get to that, I want to cordially invite you to join us next September. Pardon me, next September 10th. For the next induction ceremony of the Eastern Snowmobile Racing Hall of Fame. It's going to be at Crane's Snowmobile Museum in Lancaster, New Hampshire at 172 Main Street. Now, the ceremony begins at 1:30 p.m., but I like to tell people to arrive at 1 for several reasons. Number one, you're bringing lawn chairs. You're bringing your own chairs. That gives you time to scope out a good spot for your lawn chair. And then once that's set up, you've got time to go into the museum, Crane Snowmobile Museum. There's over 100 snowmobiles in there. So you want to make sure that you're budgeting time enough to go in there and check that out. You don't want to miss that, come all that way and not go in and check out the museum. And then once the ceremony is finished, then we've got the after party over at the Lancaster Motel. Our good friends over at the Lancaster Motel host the after party. And it's just a short walk away from the museum and the ceremony. So if you're planning to join us next year and you're driving any distance, the place to stay is the Lancaster Motel, because as the after party winds down, it's just a few short steps to your room. And if you're thinking about doing this, I encourage you to contact the Lancaster Motel right now, because every year this event books the motel solid. So if you're thinking about doing this, call the motel right now and book your room for the September 10th induction ceremony next fall. Okay, so let's get into some comments here. We've got quite a few that have come in. This is wonderful. Let me find my place here where I left off. Here it is, right? Okay, oh no, Alden Banks, yeah. From New Brunswick, Canada. I think we've done that one. Terry Hoogstra from Hensall, Ontario. Rob and Terry, thanks for checking in. We really appreciate it. Also, my buddy Armand Buteau, who I saw just a couple of weeks ago at that Bethlehem, New Hampshire show. Greetings from Pittsburgh, New Hampshire. Now, Ray Parenteau was talking about Armand as having sold him some parts to that Rupp, and says he enjoys seeing Ray Parenteau's collection and the story of evolution of the Magnum. Now, John Spranger Jr. likes the Rupp, says excellent job fabricating. Absolutely. Jacques Lewin says crazy fast. I bet that he's talking about what that Rupp would do on the snow. Jared Saylor says there were more than 100 different snowmobile manufacturers in the 70s. Absolutely. Almost too many to keep track of. Absolutely. It was a wonderful time, I'll tell you that. If anyone who was there, any of us who were there have wonderful memories of that, seeing all the different brands. And you just look out on any snow-covered field in the early 70s, and they were just crawling with snowmobiles. It was wonderful. Bill Lutz says, congratulations to Herb Yancy. Thank you for checking in, Bill. We've got Chuck Lewin says, I thought there were 16 manufacturers. Can someone list them sometime soon on the website? I can do better than that. There is a book, and it's out of my reach. I'm all strapped in here with the headphones and the cables and the lights and everything. But on a future edition of the podcast, I will bring out that book, and it lists all the different manufacturers, and I'll include a link of where you can buy it. So thank you, Chuck, for bringing that up. We will get you fixed on that on a future episode. So please check in with us here every Thursday night for an update on that. Dominic Anthony Kane says, congratulations to Herb. Outstanding. Jim Gauchione, Herb is a great guy. Thank you for checking in with these compliments. This is wonderful. Chuck Lewin says, intense riding is what Herb used to do. Absolutely. Bruce Hulls says he believes there were over 250 manufacturers in the 70s, and that is entirely possible because there were people doing it out of their garage. They would buy the components, assemble them, and sell them locally, and these are things that maybe never got on the radar as far as magazines, TV, or things like that. So yeah, and if anybody has any of those old sleds, the really obscure ones, we would love to have either photos of it, or if you can take some video of it, talk it up with your cell phone. Just hold your cell phone horizontally like this for a wide shot and talk it up. Send me the footage, and we'll share it here on the program so that we can all enjoy it. Chuck Lewin says, how many now? I think just the four, the big four, Arctic Cat, Polaris, Ski-Doo, and Yamaha, unless there are some off-brands. If somebody knows of others, weigh in here with a comment. Chuck Lewin says, keeping it alive. Yep. Pat Lima says, great story. Thank you for checking in. Josh Leviker says, Herb is the Dale Earnhardt of oval racing. Absolutely. And it was wonderful to have him on tonight. I sincerely hope that Herb is watching tonight so he can see this, see all the compliments that people are making for him. Chuck Lewin says, yes, looking to get back up there and ride that Rupp. Perhaps when there's snow on the ground, we'll go up there and visit Ray and see if we can do some yard riding on some of those Rupps. Get some footage of that. That would be incredible. So what do we have next here? We're winding down the program. Just a couple of more quick videos. If you were on here last week, you heard me talking about that Vintage Snowmobile show that happened in Bethlehem, New Hampshire on the 9th of October. It was a first-time show, and it was very well attended. You heard me talking about all these new Vintage Snowmobile shows that are popping up and how well attended they are. It's just a wonderful thing. This hobby is alive and well, and I dare say vibrant. Now, Donald Tibbetts is a friend of mine. I've been running into him at shows for years, and I ran into him at this past show, and we get into a conversation as we always do. We always have a nice visit. He's a really good friend of mine, and he had some sleds there that day. He has original sleds. He's what's the word I'm looking for? Modified and restored sleds are wonderful, but he really likes to find the original gems, and he has a building full of them. He brought two of them to the show. Let's take a look.
Hi, I'm Don Tibbett from Lunenburg, and I have a dozen old unrestored sleds, and here's two of them here today. These are both original. 78 Kawasaki SS440, a liquid. And then I got this Evinrude I picked up a few years ago, and it's a skimmer 440S.
Yeah, they got quiet.
And
Yeah, he had that fire down there.
I decided to bring these two today because they look pretty good. And it's nice to come to these shows because I get a lot of information. I see a lot of familiar faces and get to talk to a lot of people I've met through vintage snowmobile shows. So, anyway, I enjoy old sleds. And, but I'm getting on in years now, and every year it seems like the sleds get heavier.
That's true, isn't it? Yeah. It's harder to move them around.
But at the show, you can always get some help.
Yes.
So that works out. So anyway, enjoyed talking with you.
Well, cool. Well, thank you, Don. Good to see you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so he goes to a lot of the shows in Vermont and New Hampshire. And if you are going to vintage snowmobile shows in Vermont and New Hampshire, keep an eye out for him. He has a wonderful collection, and he brings different sleds to different shows, which is cool. So he kind of mixes it up, and it's wonderful for someone like myself because every time I go to film with him and interview with him, he's got something different. In fact, if you were watching last week, that cat in the cradle sled, that El Tigre that was on that little dolly or cradle with wheels, that was his sled. That was from a few years ago in Lancaster, New Hampshire. But yeah, he's a wonderful collector and a wonderful guy. Now, lastly on the program, as you saw earlier, we were looking at that footage from Jerrald Stewart of the Cohocton, New York Vintage Snowmobile Show from 2018. We're about to look at part 2 of that because I did have to break that up. As I said, I can play videos on this interface that are longer than 5 minutes, but they choke and they lock up on me. So I'm having to break them up in editing into segments that are smaller than 5 minutes. So without further ado, here is part 2 of the Cohocton, New York Vintage Snowmobile Show.
1971 Ski-Doo TNT. 1973 Noir Ski-Doo. Yancy, 1973, owned by Laura Poon. Beautiful shape, Golden Ghost. And we had John Deere, 1974, 600.
Alright guys, giving a shout out to some of our sponsors. We've got Mikey's Gas Mart, Twin Peaks Technology, Evans and Farm, Greg Robert,
Another cutter back here, 1972.
and a few more
Looking baggy, cutter.
We're still pulling out for prizes. We're still pulling out for prizes.
Fire. Oops. 75, 79 Spitfire, John Deere. We have a Moto Ski, 1871.
Yeah, this is one. Get more next year over that. Might just narrow, make that half.
We have 1970. 600 restored Kemp, cast style New York. Beautiful. Another one here, Chris, 1972. Also pure Kemp. We have an Autobogan, 1965, been restored. Beautiful. Beautiful show. Yeah, 1967 Colt. Restored. Beautiful machine.
Never saw that other one?
Just to show the engine stuff that he's done, work he's done for the car. This is John Tibbetts, actually, 1969 Polaris Mustang. We have another Polaris TX 500, 1974. Very nice, well polished up machine. 1974 Art-Capped Panther, one of your favorite leather. Very nice hard cap here. And at the end of the show we have a pair of Dear Johns here owned by Jim Van Warmer. 1974 300, as well as a 400 John Deere. 1973. Thank you for these folks for coming out today and showing us these old relics that they've recreated and cleaned up. Thank you.
Yeah, so how cool was that? Thank you so much to Jerrald Stewart for that footage from the 2018 Cohocton Vintage Snowmobile show in New York State. And I encourage you so much, I encourage you strongly, I think that's the word I'm looking for, if you are attending vintage snowmobile shows, races, any kind of events involving vintage snowmobile shows, whip out your cell phone like this and take some footage for me. Make sure to hold it horizontally like that for a wide shot. It's very difficult for me to work in editing with vertical footage. So I do ask you, if you're taking footage, to do it horizontally like that. And there's a few ways you can do it. As I mentioned earlier, you can talk it up as you're walking around like Jerrald did. It's a wonderful way to do it. You can approach people like I do and ask them if you can interview them about their snowmobile and get them to talk up the snowmobile. And I get it that not everyone's comfortable with that, and that's fine. If you want to just walk around and get some footage of the snowmobiles that are there. Pardon me. Sorry about that. I think I'm going to live. Pretty sure we'll know here in a few seconds whether or not I lived or not. But yeah, just walk around, get some footage, and send it to me, and I'll edit any rough spots out of it and put some music under it and put some graphics on it, telling where the show is and who shared the footage. So your name will be on there, giving you full credit, so that we can all enjoy it. I don't know about you, but I love looking at footage from these different vintage snowmobile shows. That's why I go to those shows and get footage, and I love to see footage from other people at other shows, especially ones that are shows that are further than I would drive to. So please give that some thought. I'm going to pop an email address on the screen. So if you've got footage, this is where we're going to send it. And if you're having trouble sending it, there's a link in the description that shows how to share video files with either Google Drive or Dropbox. There are other ways to do it as well, but there's some other third-party file sharing sites, but those are two of the easier ones to use. And if you're having trouble with any of that, just send me a message. Say, hey, Mike, I've got some footage. How can I get this to you? And we'll figure it out. Before we finish the program, let's take a look at a few more comments. A few more have come in. Les Beck says, any info on that 72 Nitro hood with the hood pins behind the Magnum? That is a good question. And if Ray is on here watching, maybe he's got answers for us, because I don't know if he's watching it live. He gets up real early, so he goes to bed real early. But I know he's going to watch this, as he's able to. And Ray, if you're watching this, leave a comment to Les in this comment area so that he can find an answer. And that's one of the things too that in the last few minutes of the program, one of the things that I like for this podcast to be is a place for people to share information. So if you've got a vintage sled for sale, or a question about how to do some sort of a repair or maintenance or modification, post it here in the comments, and I'd love to see people answer those questions. As long as it's related to vintage snowmobiles, I don't care if you've got something to sell, or what the theme of it is, or like that. As long as it's related to vintage snowmobiles, it's fair game here in the comment section. If you've got something for sale, or if you've got a technical question, or a question about, like Les has here, any info on a 72 Nitro hood with hood pins, post it here in the comment section. We've got Jerry Jackson. He's talking about that Cohocton show. He's talking about the Pete Kemp collection out of Castile, New York, that was on that video. And then Jim is the co-chair of the show for that Cohocton show. And it's great to see the Cohocton show on this program tonight. And like I said, Jerry is the gentleman who's in charge of that show. And I'm hoping that Jerry will work with us on future shows. I think they do one in June and later. And he told me, but I forget. I don't know if it's September or in the fall. But as you are having those shows, Jerry, if you can walk around, or anyone that you can talk into walking around with a camera to do some video, just hold it horizontally for a wide shot and just get what you can get, whether you're talking it up or interviewing people or just walking around, and I can put some music under it and graphics on it. I'd love to see more of that show. And as you come up with graphics to promote the new shows, share me the graphic on an email, and I'll put it here on the program, and we'll talk it up. So anytime you've got any, and not just Jerry too, but anytime any of you have a vintage show or a race or anything vintage that you're involved with and you want to promote it, contact me. I'll put that email address on the screen again. And where is it? Right here. And I will be happy to do everything I can to help you promote that with this podcast, as well as my Vintage Snowmobile Lovers Facebook page. I have other Facebook pages and groups as well. In fact, this podcast simulcasts to 8 different places on Facebook and YouTube each and every week, every Thursday night at 9 p.m. And I hope if you are a new viewer, you'll decide to join us here every week for that. And to the regular viewers who join us, thank you so much for checking in every week and being a part of this. I could not do this without you. This would get boring incredibly quick if people weren't checking in each and every week. I would get sick of it real quick if there weren't people watching. So thank you so much for making this possible. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Oh, one last comment's come in. Let's see what we've got. Oh, here we go. Jerry's saying we will definitely be doing more. Thanks, Mike, and he likes the podcast. So thank you so much, Jerry. Really nice to meet you. I'm going to send you a friend request so we can communicate directly, because we were communicating earlier today on one of the Facebook pages that I have, which is fine, but I don't check that very often. Also, as far as those Rupps, this is an answer to Les Beck asking about that 72 Nitro hood. We have a resident Rupp expert on here tonight, Armand Buteau. Now, Armand is saying that is a Bill Stahl build, and Bill is out in, I think, Wisconsin. He is also a Rupp expert. He sells a lot of Rupp parts, has a Rupp museum. It's a Bill Stahl build with a widened bulkhead, a 73 440cc fanner, 72 Nitro Ram's horn exhaust, Magnum type track and skid, and it's a beautiful build. Wow, that is a wealth of information, Armand, and we appreciate you coming on with that. This is what I like to see. This was my hope with this podcast, is to have this kind of communication and sharing of information in the vintage snowmobile space. This is a place where people can come and ask questions and find answers and just get to know each other. This is wonderful to see this coming together like that. A couple of more quick comments. Carl and Carrie Iskey says, thank you. Great show. You're very welcome, and I appreciate your coming on. And we've got Mike McAlargy. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Mike has plenty of Kawasaki Invader parts here in Caseville, Michigan. He calls himself Mike Mack, and I remember you being on last year when we had with the Ski-Doo tanks. I'm drawing a blank on his name. I apologize, but it's at the tip of my tongue. But Joe Roscoe. Okay, I was having a senior moment, but I managed to wiggle out of it. So, but for the grace of God. So I know Mike Mack works with Joe Roscoe. And, if you're interested in Kawasaki Invader parts, you see Mike on there, reach out to him. He's watching this on YouTube right now. Some people are watching this on YouTube. Others are watching on Facebook. But this is just a wonderful way for people to share information and find each other for questions and parts wanted, sleds for sale, whatever whatever people are looking for. All right, yeah, I believe that is it. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating tonight, either by way of comments or viewing, or if you can share this with friends. If you like this podcast, please, please, please share this with friends. Anyone you think who might enjoy this, if you could share this with them to help get the word out, it helps to grow the podcast and make it even bigger. And I thank you in advance so much for doing that. So, all of that being said, let me get to the right place here. We always close the program with some words from our... Oh, I missed one thing. I see another comment coming in. Les Beck says, thank you, and thank you as well, Les, for being on. I really appreciate it. And without further ado, here's a word from our friends at Mad Ramps. If you like what you see and want to order, use the link in the description, and I'll send you 3 free Vintage Snowmobile DVDs for ordering through me, because I make a commission on that. And I thank you for supporting the program in that way. Here we go, our friends at Mad Ramps.
It's the ultimate combination of simplicity and ingenuity. The newest way to load, unload, and transport your ATV or UTV. The Mad Ramps Pivoting Ramp System. Made in the USA and engineered for strength and durability. Maneuver through tight places and over rugged terrain with plenty of ground clearance. No licensing, no ongoing maintenance costs, and no storage hassles like trailers. Won't slip or move like conventional ramps. Free up more cargo space in the bed of your truck. Securely connects to your truck's receiver hitch. Easily extends for safe loading and unloading. Seamlessly retracts for highway and off-road travel. DOT approved in all 50 states and Canada. Quickly disconnects in under a minute. A unique space-saving storage system. The Mad Ramps Pivoting Ramp System. Go farther. Go faster. Go safer.
When you order using the link in the description, I'll send you 3 free Vintage Snowmobile DVDs. When you order using the link in the description, I'll send you 3 free Vintage Snowmobile DVDs.